Nightingale is on the Willson Contreras story. Is Mo shopping him? That's the question out there. Bob reporting that. It would just be shocking in one way. You just signed this guy to an $87 million contract, and all of a sudden, 3 or 4 months in, you can move him. I think it would be pretty tough to move him.
Yeah, what is his trade value right now?
Yeah, with that big contract
and not a lot of production. Yeah.
I don't know if you can do that. What do you guys think? Could you move him right now? Would you get a taker for him right now?
I don't know. I mean, right now he's a glorified DH, and he looks decent in that role. I don't know if there's anybody out there who's sitting there saying, we're trying to make a run for a World Series, and Willson Contreras is going to put us over the hump for his bat. Because you're not going to put him in there and plug him in as your starting catcher, are you? After what you've seen this year and what everything's been rumored. But there may be a person out there who thinks they can fix him and say, oh, that's just the Cardinals. They've had Yachty for so long, so they have certain expectations out of their catcher. Maybe when he comes here, he'll be in the groove and be able to handle it.
I would be gun-shy, though, that a team that thought highly enough of him to give them $80 million for like 5 years, and then all of a sudden, about 3 months in, they're just like, hey, anybody want this guy? We're not really interested anymore. I don't understand what went wrong with the Cardinals and Willson Contreras to how this is blown up to a proportion of
so quick.
They're questioning whether or not he's. I'm not saying that they're throwing him away, but they are questioning whether or not he's worth a second year.
Well, I mean, do you know what his OPS is this month? It's 1,300.
Yeah, he's had a good month.
He hasn't been good. He's been great. And you know what? The month before he wasn't bad. He had an OPS like 740 or something. But he started slow, there's no doubt about it. And, of course, it was exacerbated by the public benching, which I think the Cardinals really blew. It should never have gone public like that. It was an embarrassment to a guy who's had a really good career. So I don't think I would – I don't think you talk about getting 70 cents on the dollar. You couldn't get the value you should
I don't think so.
in return. I'd be worried more about fixing the pitching staff, unless, of course, some organization is going to give you a potential number 2 starter who's 23 years old right now for Contreras, and you think about it, because you kind of like Herrera, right?
Yes.
There's a lot to like about Herrera.
And he's younger.
Yeah. And then they have that switch-hitting catcher in the organization, too, who looks like he's going to be a player. So it would be stunning that just 3 months in, to a guy who's had a fine career, that you'd already move him.
And they did just get a young catcher from the Blue Jays, too.
That's right.
So they got some options.
But if Bob is on it, there's probably some smoke to the fire. Yeah. Yankees are interested in Contreras, a New York writer said last week, because both the Yankee catchers are injured. But here's the thing you got to remember, too, and Splashback Deuce brings it out, too, is remember last year that everybody thought, well, the Cubs are going to move them at the deadline. They stink, and everybody wants a catcher who can hit, and they couldn't move them. See, I don't want the Cardinals to be in that situation with our 3 free agents to be. Are you guys in agreement that move all 3? Even if it's just 80 cents on the dollar?
You got to move at least 2 of them. Absolutely.
We're talking about Flaherty, Montgomery, and Hicks.
Yes.
Man, I hate to flip-flop like this, but I'm kind of buying Hicks now after being so down on him at the beginning of the year. And I'm worried because I don't know who your closer is going to be.
Why do you care this season?
For next season. And
well, look, we're all in agreement that we should sign the guy right now for 3 years.
Yes.
But if I'm Jordan Hicks and I'm having a pretty good year, why do I let myself negotiate with one team when I can have 29 teams?
Exactly.
I'm almost worried that if you trade him to a contender, he's going to like that too much. And he's going to be like, oh, well, why would I go back now? But
in general, though, when you trade a guy, the likelihood of him coming back, it's happened, but in general, the odds are against you.
Yeah, but I do think that you got to just err on the side of caution and let him go. Trade him to somebody at the deadline, because if he leaves and you get nothing in return from him, you're going to be kicking yourself. So just accept it and let him go.
What do you think, Joe?
You got to keep at least one of them. I say you got to find a way to keep Jordan Hicks, because he's the one. You don't have a closer, like you said. And I think if you can somehow know for sure that he's going to re-sign with you, or if you can get him to sign right now, you have to get Hicks. Flaherty and Montgomery. Flaherty, I just think he's gone. I don't even think you can offer him anything to stay. Montgomery, you have to find a way to keep him. But again, I don't think you're going to throw the right amount of money at him. Why not go out there and see what 29 other teams think about you? Because it's going to be maybe one of your last chances to go out there and get a big contract.
All right. Free agent pitchers available this offseason. Max Scherzer is going to be available.
The Mizzou Tiger.
Ooh, yeah.
Here we go again.
At what age?
39.
39, yeah.
Yeah. Give me his numbers. Shohei Ohtani is going to be available. Now, here's the one that's really interesting because he's 32, and that's Marcus Stroman, who he pitches well against everybody but the Cardinals. And if he came here, he wouldn't have to pitch against the Cardinals. Charlie Morton is 39. He'll be available. Lance Lynn, who's been pretty rough this year, is 36. He'll be available.
Scherzer is 8-4 with a 4.2 ERA, 114 strikeouts with a 1.19 WHIP.
I'd take him in a heartbeat.
How about Luis Arias? Or Urias, I'm sorry, however you pronounce it. Not to mistake everybody with the Marlins second baseman, but the left-handed pitcher for the Dodgers.
Yeah, he's 26, I think, too, right?
Yeah, he's young. He's got the goggles. He wears number 7. He's a unique guy. He's a real good pitcher. I think that he could be a serious option for the Cardinals in the offseason.
Well, yeah, what if you were to get, I think it's Urias, right?
Probably Urias.
Yeah, Urias and Scherzer.
Ooh. You're definitely more confident than you were going into this season.
I know Scherzer's had some bad moments this year, but still, those numbers are fine.
That's true.
Yeah, and you think...
But would you be concerned you could end up in another Adam Wainwright situation?
But his velo...
Is different.
Check his velo. He's still throwing hard. And you know what? Another thing similar with Wainwright, and this is legit, is that with Max, he has had some injuries all of a sudden later in his career, which is what happens to 39-year-old guys who throw the ball 95 to 99 miles an hour.
Some people think that he was a spider tacker because he's one of the guys who started to lose it right after they started banning all the sticky stuff. But I'm not saying that is what happened, but some Mets fans who are complaining are starting to float that theory. But
and I know somebody also is going to text it and saying that Max is still ticked off at the Cardinals because they didn't go after him a while back when they had a chance. But I don't know.
I could actually see him holding a grudge. He seems like that much of a competitor. But I think Urias, gosh, I can't pronounce this guy's name. I think him and Stroman are both in play. That would be a fantastic offseason. After a dreadful offseason last year, if you bounce back with those two to be at the top of your rotation with Michaelis, that's a really nice 1, 2, 3. And then you got a bunch of young guys that you're not thrilled with right now, but hopefully you can find 2 of them to fill out 4 and 5.
All right, you got Aaron Nola too. I'd take Aaron Nola in every one of those guys. Let's see, Lucas Giolito, who has been a good pitcher but hasn't pitched as well this year. There's some pitchers out there. Gosh, there's some pitchers out there. Blake Snell? Are you kidding me?
You're going to have to spend some money.
Yeah. John Mozeliak said it about 7 days ago, last Monday at this time, right outside the Cardinal clubhouse, that free agency is the way we are going to have to go to acquire pitching. And, man, there's some good starting pitching.
Max Scherzer is throwing 93 miles an hour right now.
Really?
Fastball is at 93.
Yeah. I would not acquire Scherzer to be like your number 1 or even number 2. But at this stage of his career, and knowing what you probably don't have coming back next year, I would take Max Scherzer. He'd be my 3, Michaelis my 4. One of the youngsters, either Graceffo, Hentz, McGreevy, Libator, one of those guys is your 5. Have like 6 guys competing for the 5th spot. That's when you go into spring training feeling good. And then you have your 1 and 2s, which would be Aaron Nola, and Blake Snell. How about Blake Snell's numbers? He's only 30.
Right now, he's got a 2.67 ERA.
Okay, he's good
I
enough.
think you'll take that.
Yeah.
It's 6-8, yeah, with a 2.67, 143 strikeouts. WHIP is a 1.28.
What's Bob Ramsey saying no to? Elaborate.
Come on, Rammer.
We're at.
Yeah. By the way, on the Contreras thing, this is, you know that if you were to be able to move him, that you would have to pay part of his salary. And the Cardinals normally don't like to do that. Nobody does, but the Cardinals especially. So, yeah, that's probably not a good thing. Yeah, there's about 3 or 4 pitchers out there
that you can have to put some money out
Giolito, Sonny Gray.
there. Ooh, yeah.
Man, this is actually very attractive.
You have about $45-ish million coming off the books in free agency this year. That's assuming that everybody who's a free agent goes. And so that would be losing Montgomery, losing Flaherty, losing Hicks, blah, blah, blah. And so that could get you 2 pitchers who are both worth between $20 and $25 million a year.
Yeah, and we just...
You got options.
Yeah, and I can't remember a time where there's this many quality starting pitchers available. So... Okay, of the group, I take Nola 1 in this group.
Nola's 1, yes.
And then 2, Blake Snell. And then 3, Urias. And then Stroman would be 4.
Stroman, yeah. Stroman's out there too, yeah.
Just bring in 2,
yeah.
And then how about this, guys? We got this thing figured out. Miles Michaelis is your 3.
Mm-hmm.
Your 5 is the group of youngsters that I just mentioned.
Dakota Hudson.
Yeah, he's in that list.
He's in that group.
I don't care. You can name 7 guys competing for that 5th spot.
Graceffo.
He has a lot of people on that list.
Graceffo, McGreevy,
Yeah.
Libator, Thompson. Yeah. You can have
Woodford.
10. Who's that?
Jake
Yeah,
Jake
that's fine.
Woodford.
But you need a 4, though, right? We're not penciling in.
Yeah, you probably only want to do one of those guys and not 2 of them.
No, yeah. You're not penciling in Steven Matz, I don't think.
Well, I completely
maybe.
forgot about him. He's going to get a shot at the beginning of the year at least, just due to money. Because $10 million, if you compare that to the money that they're going to spend for starters versus relievers, he's going to be far and away the most expensive reliever you'd have, and I don't think that they'd be comfortable just giving up on him.
Okay, this is what. All right, we'll do this. We'll give you this. If they do bring in 2 of the studs that we just talked about, 2 of the 4 or 5, then I can live with Matt's being my 4, Michaelis my 3, and then a cast of thousands for the 5.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're bringing in 2 aces, that's good. And you know what? Matt's still has good stuff. And he's had good moments. Maybe
really
these
has
next couple of months he can really figure it out. You're paying him $44 million. We need him to figure things out. So, all right, we've gotten the text really rolling here. You want to read a couple of texts here?
Yes, here's a text from Dan. Why not trade everyone and start over? Follow me here. Trade both Goldie and Arenado for top pitching or high-end prospects. Play Walker at first, Gorman at third. You only have Goldie for 1 more year anyway, and you're not going to be in a playoff contender if you don't change the roster. Trade DeYoung, Flaherty, O'Neill, Contreras, Montgomery, Hicks, and Carlson for the best controlled power pitching prospect. Put Matz in the bullpen. Use free agency to sign a stud power bat outfielder to play with Lars and a journeyman bat supplement.
Okay, so I agree with some of what he's saying, but I got to tell you something. The combination of Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado is as good a 1-2 punch as there is in baseball if you factor in offense, defense, character. I don't want to move those guys. You don't want to trade those guys. You want to play those guys. And they're both going to be really good. Probably Arenado for the next 5 years. Yes. And Goldschmidt, his body is... He's not wearing down. He's not quite as good this year as he was last year. He's fine. What you do is you have a surplus of cash, probably. So you want to use your surplus to fill a shortage. And you can fill that shortage by simply spending money and not giving up players. And that's what you should do with your free agent pitchers. Get 2 of them. Get your 1 and 2, and if Michaelis is your 3, that's a pretty good rotation. So
I actually have been in the trade Goldie camp, but I think it makes no sense whatsoever to trade Arenado. You have him for 4 more years after this.
Well, unless you can get a 20-game winner for Paul Goldschmidt, which I don't think you can, why would you want to trade him?
Well, because I wouldn't, and this is the genesis of the conversation, I'm not really a guy who wants to sign him after next year because you're going to be signing up for years 37, 38, and 39.
That's fair.
And just with what we've seen from Waino this year, I don't think Cardinals fans are going to be too thrilled with a 38 and 39-year-old Paul Goldschmidt who...
Well, he's going to be 36, so you'd have to wait 2 more years before you get to that. Do you think this guy's slowing down? I don't think he is.
At some point.
In 2 years he will, but why not keep him?
I just...
He did just win an MVP.
I know. I don't expect it to be... I'm banking on him slowing down, and that's just my bet because he's going to be really old.
He's no Tom Brady is what you're saying? Not
Yep.
everyone can play that up there in that
I think
age?
Cole's an ageist.
I am a little bit.
It's that generation.
Yeah, he's going to be saying that about talk show hosts soon. I'm out of it. Rob Range joins us. Rob, good to be with you. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Frank. How are you?
Very good. Are you a little bit like...
Go
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, you
I was
go
going to say I enjoyed your interview with Mr. Barkley last night on the TV side.
Oh, he's fun, isn't he? Gosh. I love what he said about load management, too. These guys...
Yep.
All right, let's get going here. Are you a little bit like me in that, I know you have... Are you a St. Louis native, by the way?
No, I was born in Nebraska and grew up in Springfield, Missouri.
But you grew up a Cardinal fan?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So even though you're a journalist, you bleed Cardinal red from time to time. So here's my question. Are you almost glad that win streak didn't get up to 9 because they would have had a false sense of security and maybe not these? And now with these 3 straight losses in a row, there's no doubt it's time to get assets for these free agents.
I would answer the question this way: as a journalist, you always root for chaos because it always makes for great stuff. So if that, I think that would have been a really interesting couple of days before the trading deadline if they were on a pretty good winning streak and were only 7 or 8 games out of first. I think it would have really complicated a lot of decisions. So I kind of would have liked to have seen that happen just for that purpose, just to see what would have happened.
Yeah, and what do you think? I mean, it's tough to predict, but what do you think is going to happen trade deadline day?
Yeah. I think it all just comes down to what the offers are. I mean, I think they know what they want to do. I think they'd like to move those guys that are potentially the free agents just so they can, kind of restock things a little bit. But it all depends on, what the other teams are willing to offer you. I don't think they're just going to give them away for nothing because they still have the opportunity to A, keep those guys for the last couple of months and win some games. And then B, they also have the opportunity to try to sign them over the winter or make a qualifying offer to them. And if they take the offer, great. If they don't take the offer, then they get a compensation pick in the draft next, that has some value to it. So I think that there's more to it than to say we're going to trade this guy. So I think it has to be a situation where they feel like they're getting value and what they're looking for in exchange.
Okay, well, it's a legitimate point you're bringing up, but my argument is this. Let's just say you can't get equal value. But, Rob, I would rather get 80 cents on the dollar as opposed to having these guys pitch for a couple of months in an absolutely meaningless season and only get a second-round draft pick. I mean, I still think that even if you got 80 cents on the dollar, you're going to yield more in return in terms of assets.
If there are guys that they feel like are can make it as a big league pitcher, yeah. I mean, there's got to be guy. You're not going to trade for a guy that's just going to be an average AA pitcher. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it has to be a guy that 23, 24-year-old kid in AA or AAA that has had a good season. That's a good prospect that you think as a year or so can be pitching in the big leagues and be part of a big league rotation. So that's what I'm saying. It has to be, or even a guy that's already ideally a guy that's already in a big league rotation for a team that has a lot of pitching depth that can afford to kind of like. They did with Montgomery last year, that even though he was in the rotation with the Yankees, they thought they were getting an upgrade in Bader in center field. So that kind of move would be a move that the Cardinals would love to make again. Because he had a year of control with him. So there may be a guy that can get some of these teams to pry away from them, who's already had some success at the big league level. But I would think more than likely you're looking at trading those guys for a guy that's a pretty good prospect at either Double-A or Triple-A.
Yeah, maybe I'm overestimating their value, but I see Jordan Hicks over the injuries in the prime of his career throwing 104 and being really good here for a couple of months. I see Jordan Montgomery, one of the best left-handers in baseball with the exception of yesterday. And Jack Flaherty is a talent who's had some good seasons in the big leagues. I cannot believe we couldn't find a 23-year-old pitcher out there that's on the cusp of maybe being the next Zach Gallen or the next Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah, I think that's what they're looking for. Yeah, I think it's. But you got to remember too, from the team acquiring these guys, they also have to factor into the equation that they may only have these guys for 2 months and maybe the postseason as well. But with them being free agents, there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to re-sign them, and they can't make them a qualifying offer if they trade for them during the season. So they would not get that compensation pick back. So I think there's more to it that the other teams have to evaluate too. The player's talent.
Yeah, Rob Raines is with us, Hollywood Casino Pressbox. Okay, in addition to the big three free agent pitchers we've discussed, who do you think is also more likely? I would have thought a guy like Tommy Edman, who could yield something in return, but him being injured doesn't help the cause. Dylan Carlson has played a little bit better. Who else I think there's only 5 untradables. Are you in agreement with me there? Walker, Gorman, Donovan, and of course, Goldschmidt and Arenado?
I would probably put Nootbaar in that category. I don't think they're going to trade him. And then if you obviously had Mason Wynn and Tim Kentz at the minor league level.
Oh, for sure.
Trade one of those guys. I would say DeYoung is a possibility to get traded. I would say Edman's still a possibility to get traded because, if teams are, convinced that the injury is just a short-term thing. Don't forget Bader was on the IL injury list last year when he got traded. So I think and especially the fact that he is not a free agent at the end of the year, he's got more team, years of control left on his contract. So I don't think the injury, as long as teams are convinced that he's going to get over it soon, would be a detriment to him getting traded.
All right, give me an idea on who you think the Cardinals may be targeting. You actually scour minor leagues. Give me an idea.
I missed the part of the question. I lost there for a second. Say it again.
Give me an idea on who the Cardinals could be targeting in terms of a pitcher out there.
Well, there's a couple guys. It depends on the team you're talking about. The Dodgers have got a really good farm system with a lot of good pitching talent. Seattle's got some really good young pitchers. Cleveland's got a couple of guys that they really like, young guys in their rotation or right on the verge of their rotation. The Yankees have got a really good bunch of pitchers at Double-A and Triple-A. So, I think any of those teams are a possibility. Miami's got some really good young pitchers. I think I could see any of those. Baltimore, I could see any of those teams having a guy that the Cardinals would like. I mean, there's a lot of names that you could mention, but I think it just depends on the Cardinals' own evaluation. I know they're out there scouting those guys and watching them and just kind of figuring out where the best matchup is. There's about half a dozen teams. I think I just mentioned them all that I think you could see a potential deal with or multiple deals.
Rob Raines with us, Hollywood Casino Pressbox on the all-new 590 The Fan. Ron Kulpa, who's a terrific guy, a St. Louis, and had a rough day at the office. I'm wondering, are we getting closer and closer to having, computers or robots basically making calls behind the plate?
I don't think we're going to see the automatic strike zone, but I think you're going to see the challenge system that they've used in the minor leagues and they've used in the Arizona Fall League last year. I think I can see something like that coming into play pretty soon, where if a hitter or a pitcher, either one, kind of questions are called, they can ask for a review, and then you go to the robot or automatic zone to see if it was a strike or not real quickly. So I could see a system like that coming into place sometime in the near future. But I don't think you're going to ever do a system where it's totally, all balls and strike calls are made by a robot. I don't see that happening.
Scott Rolen goes into the Hall of Fame yesterday. I thought it really was like an unbelievable speech. He just... he didn't strike me as a guy who was like an incredible soundbite, but when you got him going, he was pretty good. But the way he put that whole thing together with the proper respect for the Cardinals, the passion for his family, the way he did things the right way, that was like one of the best I've heard.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable speech. He did a great job. Yeah, and it was very nice to see that he gave all that recognition to his family, all the recognition to everybody who's kind of helped him along the way. I really thought it was cool that his high school team that he's coaching now, every 15 of those players made the trip from Indiana to be there for him. So it was a very, very cool moment and something that I think everybody, if they missed the speech, they should go back and listen to it.
And fittingly, on the day that a former Cardinal third baseman goes into the Hall of Fame, the present has a day to remember with 3 more hits and one of the best plays he's made all season. Rob, he can't win the MVP on a last place team or second to last place team, but man, is he having a monster year, Nolan Arenado.
Well, remind Ozzie Smith about what Andre Dawson did in 1987, when he did win it, and why his comment was the Cubs could have finished last without him too. So he could, but he won't. But he's having a great year, and I think it's a credit to him that he's playing as hard as he is. Our team that is not playing well, and a lot of those moments have come in games when the Cardinals were way behind. So very, very good to see that he's putting in all that effort and having a lot of success right now.
You brought up the guy who plays right next to him as a possible trade in terms of Paul DeJong. How do you think that shortstop drama is going to be handled here in the next week or so with the possibility of Mason Wynn coming?
Yeah, they're not going to bring him up until he has a chance to play and has a position to play. So, obviously, the Young situation, the Edmonds situation are going to play into that decision. But certainly he's played very well for the last month or so, and I think has proven that he's ready for that opportunity. So that's going to be one of the more interesting things to watch here over the next week or so to see if one of those guys did move or there's a possibility of opening up a spot where he could find himself in the lineup on a regular basis. They're not going to bring him up just to sit him on the bench. If he comes up, he's going to play.
And anybody else catching your attention in either in AA or AAA right now?
Oh, Tink is off to, we've talked about Tink Hance a lot. He's pitching well at Springfield right now, so I think you got to watch him. But he's not going to be here right now. He's, maybe we'll come to spring training with an outside shot to make the rotation, but more than likely sometime next year when you'll be talking about him. I actually got a story coming up. We'll be out on the site later today about a kid named Ross Friedrich, who is an undrafted free agent the Cardinals just signed last week out of the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, who has a connection to St. Louis as well. So he's a good story, and a kid I'm going to be starting to enjoy watching, I think. Power hitting first baseman.
Very nice. Rob, we greatly appreciate your time, sir. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
Anytime, Frank. Thank you.
All right. That is the one and only Rob Rains.